We are Rogue Media Sports.
It is the Doomsday podcast, not long after that crazy Cowboys game, which you thought had ended a few times, and then it finally ended with a McQuamu interception. And I think McQuamu was one of those players that was chasing McLaurin on that.
May have been the last one to fall down, actually.
I mean, again, just think about what we would be talking about right now if they'd lost that game in overtime. And I do realize there are fans out there who are like, well, that would have been the better outcome because of the draft. And, of course, the players and the coaches don't approach it that way at all. But we'll put that in perspective, and we'll talk about that as Ed and I do the Doomsday podcast. But, Ed, this one had it all. And, I mean, one of the craziest endings we've ever witnessed. And, first half, Brandon Aubrey's missing kicks. It's 3-3 at the half. It felt like a miracle that the Cowboys were even able to do that, to get it to 3-3.
It was an eyesore of a football game until the fourth quarter, really.
And then, I mean, just craziness broke out. Ed, I know you always have something at the ready to put this in perspective. It did make NFL history on just like a special teams note, because there were the PATs that were missed, 2 PATs. There was the block kick, and there were 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, counting Wanye Thomas, which really, if he had made the proper decision, he should have set that thing down at about the 2-yard line, but he couldn't help himself.
Instead, he made history. He made history. He made a mistake, but it made history because Dallas is the first team in NFL history with multiple kickoff returns for a touchdown in the fourth quarter of a single game. This is also the first time in Cowboys history that they've had multiple kickoff return touchdowns in a single game. And to think that both Kevontae Turpin and Wanye Thomas scored in the final minutes of the fourth quarter makes it all seem that much more remarkable to me. I mean, I covered the Music City Miracle.
Oh my!
And that was a playoff game that flipped the outcome the other way. But this was just an incredible special teams day, both good and bad. John Fossil, every week after the Cowboys play, they have Mike McCarthy available, followed by the 3 coordinators, and it seems like every time you're like, I'm not going to miss John Fossils today, but you can't ever miss John Fossils. I mean, between the 2 fake punts that they screwed up the last couple of weeks and everything that happened in this game, I mean, you absolutely have to be out there tomorrow to hear how he recounts all of this.
I mean, I can't help but think about this, how incredibly well the defense played. I mean, Washington couldn't do anything until the very end of the game. They finally had that long drive, but it took up enough time that it didn't seem like that was disastrous or anything. I mean, the defense kept the Cowboys in the game, and then, of course, Cooper finally got it going. Cooper Rush had a tremendous second half and ended up with a great day. But it was the defense that allowed the Cowboys to do that and to take the lead like they did. And at one point, but I mean, Ed, think about what we would be talking about. The 86-yard touchdown. If
Daniels to Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, and even the McCarthy deciding not to go for 2 and kicking the extra point because going for 2, if they had made it, would have put them in a situation where they needed a couple of touchdowns, and they were able to get it to 2017. And then anyway, we would have been talking about game management and perhaps mismanagement from Mike McCarthy. I mean, there's so many different variations of this thing, but I mean, from a special team standpoint, Ed, the first half was embarrassing. I mean, Aubrey's maybe the best kicker in the NFL, one of the greatest kickers the Cowboys have ever had, and he misses a relatively short one, a 41-yard. At least when he misses them, he always seems to hit an upright or something. And then the other one was blocked, and the guy it looked like he lined up over Beebe and just came racing through the line it had a fairly easy block that had the makings. It was really hard to. I think we were so used to seeing them lose that it was hard to ever envision a win until they got it to 20-9, and then you're like, wait, they may win this game.
And it's probably contrary to their best interest at this point, as you suggested, because they're in a deadlock race coming into the game with 3 wins. Everybody has at least 2. And so they had actually moved from 9th place to 8th place in terms of the overall draft order when Sunday started. And then you had a couple teams at the bottom of the standings beat teams at the top of their divisions. And so the Cowboys were poised to move up if they'd lost the game. But obviously you see people have talked about this team quitting on Mike McCarthy. They totally contradicted that today. Like, there can't be any question about their will to win and their desperation to end that 5-game losing streak, their longest since 2015, with the way they played today, the character they showed, the resolve they showed to come back and win that game when it seemed lost so many different times. So I think you got to give the players and the coaches a lot of credit. I thought McCarthy and Mike Zimmer both were pretty good with their game plans. I mean, it was Cooper Rush's 9th career start and his first one where he had over 75% of his passes were completed. They didn't run the ball effectively against the worst run defense in the NFL, which tells you the state of their rushing offense. And then Mike Zimmer, they come into this game minus 11 in turnover margin against the Commanders team that's got the fewest turnovers in football on offense, and the Cowboys wind up +2 in the game. And to the detriment of Dan Quinn, who's all about creating takeaways and did that for 3 years in Dallas. So, pretty remarkable win that says a lot about this team's goal and how committed it is to trying to win every week, whether Jerry wants that to happen or not. And I guess if that's not in Jerry's best interest, you better get rid of Mike McCarthy, because it looks like these guys are going to play pretty hard for him.
I'm afraid so. And they could end up, what's the best they could do, Ed? 10-7? I mean, the march toward 10-7 has begun. It is the Doomsday Podcast. Mike Hamilton of Rogue Media Network. Please play the music. All right, and Cowboys get the win. And, Ed, I was just watching Mike McCarthy, a happy Mike McCarthy. I mean, I thought some of the quotes, and you've seen some of the quotes too, but like even from Schoonmaker, I think he was the one who said, and he had a big touchdown from Cooper Rush. He was the one who said, we can breathe. We can actually breathe now. And, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go with this. And I would say, what Turpin did, and we've seen him do it. I mean, he's one of the most dangerous return guys in the NFL. But, I mean, think about what happened in that moment. Like, it's 20. They've made it 2017. They've still got 2 timeouts, and, it hadn't gotten to the 2-minute warning. So you're like, oh, man. I mean, they're going to get the ball back and probably have a shot at this thing if the Cowboys don't get a first down, and we're wondering how they'll treat that and what Mike McCarthy will call. And Ed, I don't recall ever seeing a spin move that looked like that. I mean,
he mishandled the ball. He mishandled the ball when he fielded it at the 5, and it will roll back to the goal line, and he runs back and picks it up, and then sort of runs toward the onrushing Commanders, and just for no apparent reason spins in the middle of the field. And between those two things, it seemed to get everybody out of their respective assigned lanes and created the very kind of broken field that he excels in. And, he's now tied CeeDee Lamb for the team lead in touchdowns with 4. I think it's gotten to the point where you have to consider him one of the greatest free agent signings in franchise history. And this franchise has had a lot of great free agent signings over the years. But what a tremendous weapon he's become, both on offense and he's always been that on special teams. That's how he's made the team. And then, then Wanye Thomas doing what he did on an onside kick directly at him and runs it in for the touchdown. The Washington kicker had a bad day.
Yeah. And that's he's a Sooner, former Sooner, 28-year-old Austin Seibert. We're sorry.
He just got reactivated to the roster this weekend.
They shouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly. They might have won the game without him.
Yeah, they could have put up.
But a couple other things I think we should point out is, 34 points. That's the most the Cowboys have scored this year, and it's a little misleading because a lot of the points came on special teams, as we've already talked about. Two of the touchdowns. But they've won as a double-digit underdog, the first team in the NFL this year to do that. There have been 5 other opportunities for teams. They did it while playing without the 5 players who count the most on their salary cap. And they did it missing 7 starting players, playing on the road and a short week against a Washington team coming off a mini bye and playing at home. And now we've got to look at the very real possibility when you look at the damage the Cowboys have done to their draft status today of them actually winning again in 4 days on Thanksgiving Day against the Giants, who are playing Tommy DeVito at quarterback and were horrific today.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet clowned on by Baker Mayfield, who was taunting poor DeVito with did you see that touchdown? Baker, yeah. Do some of that.
I was thinking, didn't Baker originate that at Oklahoma? Didn't he used to do that all the time at Oklahoma?
No, Johnny Football did that. That's man's.
Oh, it was Johnny Football. Maybe
I'll do that at A&M, but it wasn't like this is supposed to be kind of the Italian.
Oh, the Italian
thing.
Yeah, okay.
This was the thing that Johnny. This is the thing Johnny used to do.
Yeah.
Okay, to echo Ed's point. So the highest paid players on the Cowboys roster, the 5 highest: Dak, of course, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin, Trayvon Diggs, and Brandon Cooks, all missing out on this game. And Tyler Smith makes the trip, and they're like, no, he can't go. And so they're out there with an offensive line with Hoffman.
They've got a backup quarterback who hasn't won a game yet in 2 previous starts this year, playing on the road on a short week, as I said, and he's got 2 rookie starting offensive linemen and 2 backup guards. And they did a pretty good job protecting him. I don't think they did very well trying to run the ball, but I thought McCarthy did a good job of throwing it to the backs and creating some easy throws for Cooper Rush, and he mostly kept the ball out of harm's way. They protected him well enough that he's had a couple of fumbles and a couple of sacks in his 2 previous starts, and he, for the most part, was able to avoid those sorts of negative plays today.
Okay, Guyton just made all sorts of mistakes over at left tackle, and I guess they had a previous plan to have Awesome Richards in there, number 78 on your roster over at left tackle, and then by the end, Guyton was I think it was in his head. He was having such an awful day. He got another a false start, and they just ripped him out of the game. Just get off the field. It was on a second down.
Yeah, he's one of the most penalized players in the NFL this year. I believe he came into the game with 9 penalties, so he had 2 more today. So he's become a liability, and his work ethic, I think, makes him unpopular among some members of the coaching staff. But they're pretty shorthanded on the offensive line, and many times haven't had a better alternative. As much as they'd like to have one.
Yeah, and but I mean, Ed, I got to say, I'm not so sure that Cooper Rush, given his stats and how he performed at the game's biggest, most crucial moments, that may have been the best game for any Cowboys quarterback this season. I'm sure Dak had, and even Cooper had a game where he threw for 354 yards, but so much of it was meaningless.
Well, he set career highs last year for, I think, 384 yards, but it came on 55 pass attempts. And
last week,
obviously he had a couple of turnovers. He got sacked 5 times in the game. So this was a much cleaner performance in the game, and against a Dan Quinn defense, which is all about, creating pressure and forcing quarterback mistakes. And they, like I said, avoided that for the most part today.
Wasn't that? I thought that was a pretty good comment from maybe it was Olsen that said it during the game today for Fox, and it was just maybe because Dan Quinn's in the building, these Cowboys are getting back to takeaways. And I mean, it was just Donovan Wilson makes a huge play, and it's just a flat out punch out on that tight end, the young tight end for the Commanders, number 87. And it just, they were opportunistic. They were making plays. I mean, it was and until they weren't. And I mean, again, we would not be talking about. I mean, we would mention that the defense had played well, but if they lose that game in overtime, and if a guy can make an extra point, we would be talking about an 86-yard touchdown that they gave up. And Ed, it's one of the most improbable. We've seen Hail Marys. That wasn't a Hail Mary. I mean, there's 33 seconds left at the start of that play, and he throws it down the sideline, and he happens to, and it's like, I've never seen so much disaster on one play. Like, as he's making the catch, two dudes just kind of time it up wrong. I guess they were maybe thinking they were going to get an interception or something, so they just miss him. And then it was like, then he was up against the slowest defensive backs in the history of the NFL. McQuamu, who made the interception at the end of the game, could not even get close to catching him. I think Wilson was back there chasing him. They had 8 guys in coverage, and they never really got close to him after he got past that initial little wave.
He got past Jordan Lewis up the sideline and caught the ball about 20 yards downfield and turned it had almost 70 yards after the catch. It was very poor coverage. It seemed like Lewis didn't play deep enough, didn't carry him deep enough, and they caught him in the zone in between, and then nobody took the right pursuit angle, and it would look like the Stanford band was on the field or something. It was almost that bad. But speaking of the secondary, undrafted Josh Butler takes the place of Kalen Carson, who we talk about rookies who are on the S list with the coaches. I think he's on there above Guyton at this point. He got yanked out of the game when he started 2 weeks ago. Didn't start because Butler started in front of him last week and again today. And today, because Deron Bland is back, he's inactive. He's a healthy scratch, a 5th-round pick who was starting. He was a starter week 1 out of necessity, but he's played so poorly. But undrafted Josh Butler had a great game today. Broke up 3 passes, had 11 tackles. It was the most pass breakups by an undrafted Cowboys player since 1994. Sterling Moore. So quite a performance by him. Then, a couple of other guys.
Sterling would have been playing after 1994, but I know
Sterling Moore. He was the last undrafted player.
I know. I'm just saying. Yeah,
3 breakups in 2013, I think.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah. Chauncey Golston with that intercepted or recovered fumble. He's been playing great. It was first interception by a Cowboys defensive lineman since DeMarcus Lawrence had a pick 6 in 2021, also against Washington. You mentioned Luke Schoonmaker, a tight end who's been in the doghouse out there, was hardly playing at all. All of a sudden, he had a great game last week after Jake Ferguson suffered the concussion that kept him out of this game, and he was a huge factor today. You mentioned the touchdown catch, but so 3 or 4 guys who delivered unexpectedly brilliant performances in a time of real need. I think ultimately when you look at this, the Cowboys still really aren't a good team, but I guess Washington is maybe not the team we thought they were. And if they don't make the playoffs, because they've now lost, 3 straight, if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to look back at this as a game that kept them out.
And by the way, their offensive coordinator, who was rumored to be, Jerry's friends with everybody. He's being asked about all these. Oh, yeah, he's a great friend. I love Cliff, and
when you don't play him all the time, he's really hard to deal with.
But if you think about it, he was a part of some of those hot starts with the Cardinals. I mean, I think didn't they get off to a similar 7-2, 8-1 type start one year?
Very much his history as a head coach in college and as an offensive coordinator and head coach in the NFL, that his teams play incredibly well the first half of the season and then fall off the map in the second half of the season.
Wasn't it funny? We always see this, and I know everybody's like, why don't you play like that the whole game when quarterbacks get in a 2-minute offense and go rolling down the field? But it was funny to see Jaden Daniels, Olsen was calling for it the whole game. Take some shots. Take a shot downfield. You got to throw the ball downfield. And so when they got put in that position where they had to move it downfield, he starts just ripping balls deep down the middle, down the field. And you're like, why in the world were you guys not trying to do this? And
we assume the Cowboys' coverages had changed at that point in the game.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And because they had a pretty good rush. I mean, they had 4 sacks in that game. Micah had a late sack that was
Micah had 2.
Yeah, I just said
another multi-sack
late,
game for Micah Parsons. Yeah,
I was just talking about his late sack, but yeah, he had 2. I mean, they were. He was under fire, and he is a great runner. And I mean, I think they're at their best when they kind of use his legs and that kind of thing. And he had a keeper for a touchdown, Ed, that went that put him up 9-3. Of course, Siebert misses an extra point.
Yeah, that was coming out of the locker room at the end of the half, so which has been one of the areas where the Cowboys have been most consistently failures, was the way they've started the game in the first quarter and how badly they've been outscored in the third quarter. But I think in the third quarter of this game, they finally outscored the opponent. Barely, but they did. And it was really the fourth quarter game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking about some of those crazy plays that will just get looked over because of what Turpin did and then the other one. But, like, think about CD, who played really well. But, one of the things we've criticized him for is – not always on some of those Dak interceptions. It's like, man, you could fight for the ball, or you could try to break it up, or you could. And today, it's like for Cooper Rush, he'll do that stuff. I don't know.
Well, when the play was negated by an interference penalty, but his initial reaction was to give up on the play. He didn't realize the ball had been picked, and he kind of quit on the play. And the coaches on the sideline, who was yards away from him, were yelling at him to go. That the ball had been intercepted, and he did go back and punch it out. And he wound up having 10 catches in the game. And, in fact, he passed Jason Witten for the most 10-catch games in Cowboys history with his 12th.
Wow. Well, the one I was thinking about actually was Cooper Rush threw a ball, might have been the first half, and it was beautiful what he did. He came back to the ball, and it was like those dudes were waiting just to get the interception, and he came rolling back in. And they mentioned how, and again, you could just see it in real time. It's like, man, that was a great play because he's going full speed, he's open, and then he realized, this throw, if I don't, make a play on this ball, it's going to get picked off. And he makes the catch, and it's for a first down. So I thought, boy, you mentioned Schoonmaker. I mean, honestly, Dowdle had his moments. I mean, it's like, and I love now that's been given so much like notoriety that he was called the feature back. Like we thought Zeke was some kind of feature back. He hadn't started in forever. But the minute McCarthy, and I know it was big because it was the first time anybody from the Cowboys organization had just come out and said it.
This was a failure. This running back by committee was a failure.
Yes. It was like, this is our feature back. Rico Dowdle. And yes, but today, I mean, when you throw it to him, which is why I thought it was kind of humorous that like on one huge key drive in the fourth quarter, who do I look out there and see but Zeke? Zeke, they're handing the ball to Zeke, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And they still baffle me on some things. Like they wanted, I feel like they're almost trying to do things for Jerry, which is maybe all they do. But it's like, yeah, I guess we got to do this Trey Lance package. Okay, send him in here. Like when they do it, they'll literally just have him hand the ball to CeeDee Lamb. The same thing Cooper Rush could do. Like there's nothing. Maybe they think just his very presence, the other team will be like, oh my gosh, we have to account for Trey Lance.
Yeah, we have to defend the zone read now.
Oh my goodness.
Which isn't hard to defend if the quarterback, A, is never considered a passing threat, and B, never keeps the ball to run.
So, like the only times he came in, really nothing happened. In fact, he
plays, right?
Yeah, but he came in down around the goal line, and that play got blown up. I mean, I think he actually was able to get back close to the line of scrimmage. So here comes Cooper Rush back for second down, and then the second time they just had him in there to hand the ball for CeeDee Lamb, and you could almost read his body language, and it's kind of like, why am I even here? What am I doing why am I even on this team?
You're making $5 million when you pick up your check on Tuesday. You'll feel better.
You'll feel a little bit better about things. So, Cowboys win this thing, 34-26. One of the wildest endings. And then, Ed, let's come back to one point though that we both brought up, and I know how fans are thinking. It's like, and I think the same fans that were kind of like hate watching that deal, like they were probably crestfallen when they gave up that touchdown and we're like, they're going to lose this game. And then they're kind of happy when that guy misses the extra point. And then it hits them. Oh, my gosh, like they had moved up, as Ed pointed out, to the number 8 team in drafting, and this has now dropped them out of the top 10. And this would be just like the Cowboys to end up like at 500 and go nowhere, but completely screw up their draft order.
Have like the 16th, 18th pick in the draft.
Yeah. To rally to get to 500 and to well, you can't finish 500, but
the Travis Hunter pick is officially in jeopardy now.
And without that pick, you can't get Dion. You get
2 players for the price of 1. What's going to be better?
And Dion lost by the other day. Interesting. It's like, oh, Dion's not as attractive now. Dion lost to what, Kansas or something. Yeah. So anyway, but what do you, Ed? You've been around. Tanking has been in the past more of an NBA thing. It then became a little bit more of an NFL team, and we've seen teams sort of actively pursue that. In fact,
like the Giants.
The Giants are pretty good at it. A certain head coach may have been run out of Miami for not tanking, and then allegedly there was a bonus given to him if he would lose a certain amount of games.
Brian Flores,
correct. And I don't think McCarthy knows he's on his way out, and so McCarthy's going to coach his like his life depends on this. Like he's not going to try to help some sort of tank strategy. So Ed, I think this could end up being causing a lot of conflicted feelings among fans. I also think this team just functions better on the road. I mean, we've seen how horrible they are at home. Now, I think it's almost impossible to lose to the Giants, but at home, I would not completely rule it out.
Well, when you're talking about tanking, I mean, the Giants have removed their starting quarterback and former number 6 pick in the draft, Daniel Jones, and started their number 3 quarterback over their number 2 quarterback. And they've done it strictly for financial purposes to protect $23 million. And we've seen other teams do it. The Broncos did it with Russell Wilson last year, and the Raiders did it with Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr in recent years. But it causes all kinds of problems in the locker room because even if you're doing it to save money and you understand why they would have that kind of motivation, at the same time, you're asking these players to put their health on the line every week and invest fully in preparing to play well and win. And then you're denying them that very chance for your own purposes. And so that doesn't play very well. And we're seeing a lot of chaos with the Giants right now. And so you're asking the Giants to come off that loss and that whole situation and fly to Dallas and play on a holiday 4 days later. I can't imagine that's going to turn out very well. I think the Cowboys have beaten them 13 out of the last 14 times anyway, although that's been generally with Dak Prescott, the quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, so if you're talking about which teams are tanking, I think the Giants can be accused of that much more than the Cowboys. The Cowboys don't seem to have any interest in that. And Jerry and Mike McCarthy are at cross purposes here. Like, Jerry needs McCarthy to fail. It's better for him if he's going to make a coaching change and gets higher draft picks for his next regime. But for McCarthy, he doesn't want to take more losses than he has to, especially if he has to go out and market himself, coming out of Dallas off a bad season after winning 12 games 3 years in a row. He doesn't want this to negatively affect his record or the way he's viewed in terms of coaching a team that, geez, you lost your team the end of the year. He doesn't want that to be the case, or the allegation by, when he meets with owners about other jobs. So, if Jerry doesn't want to win games, he wants to secure a draft pick, I guess he needs to fire Mike McCarthy during the season, which is what he said he won't do.
He won't do that. And if McCarthy somehow rallies this thing and gets it to like 9-8, there'll be some pressure like, well, this guy with Cooper Rush turned the season around.
Yeah. Jerry's already said that's not going to happen because remember after the game, Rush started, he said, we won 3 ball games with Dak. So Jerry's well aware that this team was not good in his opinion, not capable of winning, not meeting his expectations, even when they had the highest paid quarterback in football. So he didn't want to hear that, well, Mike McCarthy lost Dak, and that's why they lost.
All right. We'll have a few more thoughts on this. It is going to be time now. We need to bring in our former NFL scout and coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, who Ed is noted. He's very tough on the special teams coach. So there'll be parts of this where he'll probably get after Fossil, kind of a mixed bag, and there'll be part of it where he has to praise him. So this is going to be interesting. And I wanted to say a word about Marable Homes. We are in the midst of putting something together that we're going to be able to show you later in the season. I think you're going to enjoy it, and you'll get to see some of these gorgeous interiors, the staircases, the luxury homes that are being built all over North Texas, really, but Highland Park, Preston Hollow, Lake Highlands. I like to include my neighborhood, Ed, even though I wouldn't call it like luxurious, but I like to just kind of throw it in there. But he is building beautiful, beautiful luxury homes, and what they do and their craftsmanship and it's just an amazing experience having them build a home. And I want to continue to tell you, marablehomes.com. And Ed, as you and I probably do what we always do, we'll have a holiday lunch together to catch up, and then we'll hopefully do that in the evening so we can go around and look at Christmas lights together. And I'll show you some of these Marable homes
in a horse-drawn sleigh, I hope.
Yeah, we'll have a horse-drawn carriage, and it'll be right down there in the midst of Highland Park, and you'll love it. We'll have a blanket over us. It'll be the whole
beautiful.
9 yards. Okay, now it is time for the our scout, our coach, our friend, and a member of the WFAA staff, just like Ed Werder. It is Glenn Stretch Smith. It is time for Stretch Plays, and Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout coach. And Stretch, you have at times been tough on Bones Fossil, but I mean, both teams today. First of all, can you remember anything quite like this? The swings that took place in the final 3 minutes of this game, and then, of course, the giving up the 84-yard play or 86-yard play, and then the missed extra point. I mean, that thing had so many turns back and forth. I mean, it was just, it got so bad in the first half that even the Cowboys kicker was missing what are usually chip shots for him. And of course, they gave up the block kick. I mean, this was and it's the first time in the history of the NFL since like 1994, a team has had 2 kick returns for touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Does this bring anything to mind? Have you seen anything quite like this?
I have not. I can tell you the last time that I saw an onside kick return like that, I was coaching at Oklahoma, and we were in an absolute dogfight at Iowa State. And it was the same thing. They tried an onside kick real late in the game. It takes a candy hop to our receiver, Eric Bross. He picks it up, takes it for a touchdown. So I haven't seen anything like that. I don't know. And initially, when I started looking at it, and then I go back and take a gander special teams wise, you understand that with both Smith and Martin being out, then they had to change who the wing guy was, who they had to move Cooper Beebe out to be the tight wing guy. And if you've never played that position, it's hard to understand that you feel like you're so wide, and all of a sudden you got a guy on you and a guy outside of you. Well, the reason that you see a special teams coach constantly standing out there with a stopwatch is they're wanting the ball off at a certain time. And so at a certain point, all you really got to do is get a hand on the wide guy. But what you absolutely cannot do is let the guy split you in between what is the tight end and the wing. You cannot let that happen. And so he lets that happen. It causes a block. And until you see it, you could practice it the whole time. Until you see it in real speed, it's hard for me to be critical of Fossil and what they're doing, because there are so many different moving parts with guys they're trying to put in the football game. I mean, as far as Turpin grabbing that, the thing that I like that he's done is he's kind of, when he's decided he's going to return one, he really takes his time and almost jogs up until he sees the crease that he looks for, and then boom, he changes his speed. Well, on that particular kickoff, he didn't have time to jog up because the ball's on the ground. He's kind of fumbling with the ball. He grabs it, does a James Brown turnaround, and all of a sudden sees a crease and is gone. And so I think what the Cowboys did was try and put some other moving parts in the game. And again, it's hard to be critical of that when you've got so many injuries, but we know that Turpin is a dangerous return guy. And if you don't stay very, very aggressive and where you want to be from a lane standpoint when you're covering a kickoff for the Commanders, I mean, that's what happened. They got a little bit out of their lane. They weren't disciplined with where they wanted to be. And then the minute that happens, then he's out the gate and gone. So, I think special teams wise, your initial knee-jerk reaction is, oh my gosh, it doesn't look like they've even worked a lot of special teams. They get a blocked punt. The center gets walked all the way back in there. I mean, he's standing there. I've never seen that before. I've never seen a guy snap the ball and stand straight up like he's a jack-in-the-box guy and just get walked right back into the kicker. And so I think that's the one thing that you think, man, that's eye-opening and concerning, that they're turning that a certain way and he can't get but all those things, to me, all that's correctable. I'm not going to get on here and be critical of anything other than to say, I mean, Turpin is a dangerous guy and you have to give him that opportunity. And that's what the Cowboys did. He got the crease and he was gone.
Going into this game, Tyler Smith wasn't able to go. They had gotten rotating with Awesome Richards out there at left tackle. Extremely tough day for Guyton. The rest of the guys, Stretch, Hoffman had to step in there. They had all kinds of, Beebe, of course, was in there, but it was a makeshift crew because Zach Martin didn't even make the trip. At times it really seemed like they held up okay given what they had. And then for this quarterback to play like he did, I was saying to Ed, Stretch, I don't know, including Dak, I don't know that a quarterback's maybe had as good a game given the throws he was making, when he made them, the timing of it. I thought he played an extremely a good game, to get this thing done for the Cowboys. Talking about Cooper Rush.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the offensive line, what you started with, and that's Mike Solari, the offensive line coach. I've always thought is a really good technician at teaching the little things from offensive line play. The little 6-inch step here, the little stab there, the little make sure your head placement is here. All of those little things he's very good at, and you could tell today with Bass and Hoffman coming in the game, they were well coached. They were well coached with how to step, taking the correct steps, taking the correct angles with when they throw the little wide receiver bubbles and the wide receiver tunnels. They were very coordinated with what they were doing up front. I mean, you make a good point. Guyton, it looks like he's starting to feel the pressure of being a first-round draft pick. He's making little mistakes. And I say little mistakes. I mean, there's no way you can line up off of the football and not get your head to break the plane of the center's, rear end. You have to know that. And he's known that for a long time. That's not anything new. The other thing concerning is that then he jumps and you can't do that when you're playing so many guys that are not used to being in the lineup. I'm talking about, that got a new receiver in there. You got a second string quarterback, all the things that you're trying to mesh together to get an offense to go. It's a little scary that he keeps making these mental mistakes. Like, that's a problem. And so I don't know if he's putting too much on himself but they did put Awesome Richards in there, and he did fine. And so to be able, the key to what they could do offensively is able to run the football. And when you can get a hat on a hat inside, and when you can take good angles, all of a sudden then that allows you to boot off of it. That allows you to get that little action that Rush was able to get. And I mean, I think he threw, I want to say right around 50 yards, balls just where he booted out and dumped the ball, right into a team route or what's a flat route. And so with that being said, he was he being Cooper Rush was very, very dialed in to the game plan and what they wanted to do. Do I wish he was a little more accurate with the football on a few throws? Absolutely. Do I wish he could push the ball deeper? And he's got another 6 games to play. He's going to have to be able to push that ball deeper. But in this particular game, I mean, they went out and executed about as good as they could execute. And I'm saying that because, yes, did it disturb you? He had a ball batted when all he's got to do is dump the ball over the guy for a 15-yard gain. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the offensive line did a great job today of protecting him and then allowing Dowdle to get some runs. And then I'm going to combine that with saying McCarthy did have a good game plan. I mean, they ran some toss. They got the ball outside some and were able to get the back and CD on the perimeter, and that allowed them to move the football and then be able to boot and do the things off of it. So, I mean, if you're realistically grading this football team and you're looking at how they played all throughout the football game, I mean, it's a winning effort. And style point and wins is hard to do. And do I wish they hadn't given up that deep ball? Yeah, but let me tell you something. It's hard to coach all that when you got Butler coming in there and you got guys coming in there that just were not ready to play. And we haven't gone to defense yet. I know we're trying to give the offense a grade. It's a winning grade. And overall, you have to be pleased with how Schoonmaker ran routes. Do I wish he'd cut off on the backside a little better? Yes. If you're sitting here grading him hard, you're like, damn, you had an opportunity twice. All you had to do is cut off the backside end. He doesn't do it, and they get smacked on a 3rd and 1, and they're not able to convert. But at the end of the day, he ran good routes, and as a backup player, it's hard to grade these guys critically.
All right. On the defensive side, boy, you mentioned, I mean, Butler actually played extremely well today. And in fact, it was like the most pass breakups by an undrafted player in many years. They had Sterling, former SMU player, back in the early aughts, early 2000s. Sterling Moore, I think, was his name. But man, that was a really nice performance. And then you get Deron Bland back. Diggs didn't make the trip, and still Wilson makes wasn't that interesting stretch? I mean, they on the TV they made the statement. They're like, well, they got the same building as Quinn, and they start getting takeaways, and they were opportunistic. They were ripping the ball out. Donovan Wilson punched the ball out one time. That was I think, to use your word, that was a winning effort on defense for most of the game.
Yeah, I think if you're honest with yourself and you look at it, I mean, those are things that Mike Zimmer coaches. Yes, those are things that Dan Quinn coached. Yes, those are things that every defensive coordinator in the NFL coaches. I like that. It felt like let me say it this way. The Cowboys played with a level of intensity today on defense, and they were able to do that because guess what? The offense wasn't going 3 and out. They weren't going 3 and out 4 or 5 straight times in a row. And when you can do that, defense is really about chasing the football and giving great effort. At the end of the day, I don't care at what level. You can go to Pee Wee level, go to high school football, you can go to junior college football, you can go to Power 5 football, you can go to the NFL. All defensive coaches coach chasing the football with great angles, because when that happens, then good things start to happen. And I think that's what you saw today was a defense that was getting after it. I mean, they were, and as a Cowboy fan, if you're a Cowboy fan, you've got to take your hat off to Mike McCarthy and Mike Zimmer because the team is still continuing to buy in and they're playing hard. And that was the difference in today's game was Wilson. Yeah, he got beat on the route, but he didn't give up. Bang, he peanut punches the ball out. They get a huge turnover. Those are things that, to me, you're starting to buy into what's going on. And I think that if you're Mike Zimmer, you have to be extremely proud of how those guys played.
All right. So strong performance. Stretch. The Cowboys now improved to 4-7, and they really have some beatable teams. What is your thought on, fans that are mad that if they reel off some wins here, they're going to hurt their draft position, knowing they were 8th coming into the game? As a former coach, but also a former scout, knowing where you would, if this is going to be a new regime and you're likely not going to make the playoffs, how do you look at that? How do you account? Because there are people out there like, well, they screwed up and they won a game. I guess you probably don't have it in you to even look at it from that angle.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what makes you think that even if they do have the number 1 draft pick, that you're absolutely positive that they're going to get it right? I mean, we've seen and played this game. I mean, I could flip over the card and say, well, no, okay, got the number 1 draft pick and draft another defensive lineman out of Michigan, and now you got your sack full of tacos. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to look at, and so do I ever consider myself in this position right here where you've got start of the day you had 7 games to play, I believe. When you've got that many football games to play, you're trying to win. You are wanting to win, and you're wanting to put your best effort out there. Because no matter what anybody says or how anybody looks at it, when you put yourself on the football field and it's in a game, it's like drawing in a Sharpie pen. It's forever. It's forever. Anybody's going to be able to go back, Google up that football game, look at that football game and see. And so that's part of your resume. That's part of what you're putting out there. And do you think for 1 second that any of these guys want to put a less than great effort out there on the field where somebody could look and point, watch Sports Center or Stephen A. Smith or any of these other guys that are analysts and put a less than great effort out there to say, well, we were just trying to get the number 1 pick? I mean, at the end of the day, I get it. You want a great draft pick. Yes, I get it. You want to be able to flip the switch next year and say, well, we have the first pick in the draft. We're going to pick 1, we're going to pick 33, and we're going to pick whatever it is, 70, whatever that number is. We'll have 3 picks in the top 100. And holy cow, can we turn this thing around? Well, when you look at it realistically today, do you not feel better about a guy like Chauncey Golston who's playing his butt off? Or do you not feel better about Thomas? Yeah, he got beat a couple times, but is playing his butt off. All of a sudden, Jordan Lewis now playing outside, playing his butt off. There were some guys to me that were, and so I'll never buy into that. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're screwing it up here. Let's finish the season strong. Let's go see if we can get some wins here. And who knows how this thing's going to play out. And I'm not at all looking at the other side of it. I'm saying that at the end of the day, I'll never buy into the feeling that you need to go out there and just tank it so you can get the first pick.
All right, there he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith. After the Cowboys game, you can watch him this evening, WFAA 10:30 Sports Special with Joe Trahan, and he'll be reacting to all of that as we get ready for Thursday's game. Stretch, quick turnaround. I'll talk to you on Thanksgiving. Thank you very much, sir.
Have a great evening. Sorry to bother you tonight again, Mosley. See you later.
Okay, there he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays.
You always love. You love what Stretch says, and you also love the graphics that just always have Stretch, and you can just tell there's a look on his face like he's about to throw out one of those homespun type comments, or heckle somebody, as I've seen him do from time to time. And again, this was a wild one. What this offered us. I think there's some fatigue that sets in on a fan base and maybe even podcasters and reporters and media when a team is just doing nothing and heading to nowhere, and everybody's it's kind of like hurry up and wait, because after the holidays, after Christmas, it's time for a coach search, new coach. There's a lot of excitement that'll be around that, and you'll want to be tuned into everything we have to say on that. But then it's just when a season's falling apart early, and then you're like, oh my gosh, these guys have like 8 games left or 6 games. It's just like, this is a lot of games left to go cover, as bad as they are. Today, Ed, was kind of a reprieve. It's just like a moment to go, okay, this is kind of fun. And so I don't get caught up in how could these guys win a game? They're not tanking properly. I would rather be entertained. And today, Ed, we were entertained in every possible way. As you reported, history was made. And I do not think, of all the fun endings in the NFL this season, and there were Hail Marys earlier. That was incredible to see. There'll be better maybe endings to a game, but there will not be a wilder like final 3 minutes of a game this entire season.
Let me put that into context. Washington, Dallas, it was 20-9 with just over 3 minutes left in the game. And it ends up 34-26. The 41 combined fourth quarter points tie the most in any quarter in the last 3 years, and tie for the most in any fourth quarter in the last 5 years. The only other quarter this season with 41 points was a fourth quarter game between the Colts and Jaguars in week 5. But the 41 points are the most in the final 9 minutes of regulation since 2012. Lions-Titans had 43 points. So, and the missed extra point that would have tied the game for Washington, and then maybe they probably wouldn't have done the onside kick that made history. Austin Siebert, since the extra point was moved back in 2015, he's only the 3rd kicker to miss a potential game-tying extra point in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, joining Matt Bryant of the Falcons in 2019 and the Ravens' ever trustworthy, till recently, Justin Tucker in 2018 against the Saints. So that's the amazing thing about the NFL. For the hundreds of years that they've played this game, how many times you watch a game or cover a game and you see something that's never happened before? It never ceases to amaze me how frequently that occurs, that something has never happened before in the NFL happens several times every weekend in the league.
All right. It is wild, and I would be remiss if I didn't drive home the point that Cooper Rush ended up being really good, and while the offense was not doing much, the defense was setting them up and getting takeaways and making big plays. I think I did bring up the block punt. That was awful. Letting, I think, number 20 come through there. But Cooper Rush, Ed, that play he made to, who was that, Jalen Brooks at the end of the half?
41-yard play? Yeah.
He sends that thing down. It was like a back
Why did they wait till the last play of the half when they couldn't fully capitalize on their longest completion of the game? Why don't they throw it down the field earlier?
Well, I mean, I think that's a fair question, but it did lead to 3 points.
Yeah, but you never got a chance to make it 7 points.
That's. By the way, did you see how quickly they scampered that kicker out there? They had 7 seconds. They could have. They maybe could have run a play or something. They're like, get him out there. Let's kick the dang field goal.
Yeah, it looked like early on the rot that had overtaken the offense and the defense over the course of the year had now seeped into the special teams at an unsavory rate, and poor Brandon Aubrey was no longer reliable anymore either.
No, and that's That's shocking when you see that happen. But he got his mojo back, and he hit like a 51-yarder, and he hit it in good form. And on this day, it was another kicker who was who ended up really blowing it for the Commanders. And as Ed said, they welcomed him back. Now I think they'd like to usher him right out of there. And I liked at the very end, Ed, after the game was finally over, like there was a special teams coach. Who is it? Izzo is the special teams coach. They were over there like working with him, showing him what he did wrong on his
how he yanked another kick.
I imagine sending him out there for the onside kick after that. Like, okay, go try to do. Nobody. That's another play, Ed, that just doesn't even. Nobody has a chance at it anymore. I think that they've legislated the ability to get an onside kick. It's so much has to happen.
There have been two successful onside kick recoveries this year, and the Cowboys had one of them.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. On the by the way, they did the old school. Siebert tried to kick it to himself. They used to. That goes back to the Cowboys. Septien used to be okay at that. Like kind of you'd kick it down there and go recover it off.
They'll knock them all off the 10-yard line and let the kicker recover it.
Yeah, let the kicker recover it, and doesn't really happen anymore. And some big catches. Tolbert makes the big touchdown catch. On a ball that was, again, he made plays. Brooks made plays. Even Ed, who's our new friend, I believe Mingo. I saw a Mingo catch.
Mingo had a play. Yeah.
Mingo reached out there. But again, big day for the quarterback. And the Cowboys get a 34-26 win. It's a quick turnaround for the Doomsday podcast. We want to wish our folks a happy Thanksgiving, early Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday leading up to it. And then Ed and I will be ready to jump on with you and react to the Cowboys and the Giants on Thanksgiving Day, and that, of course, will happen this Thursday, and so that'll be fun. Ed, that'll be great. Are you carving up any? What are your responsibilities leading up to Thanksgiving?
Jill's already started cooking stock and making pies, and my responsibilities are basically limited to carving at this point.
Are you good at that?
I am pretty good at that.
Do you use
I use an electric knife. Electric knife, yeah.
Yeah, the electric.
And then, of course, I'll help clean up and everything, but depending on circumstances surrounding the game.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that Doomsday would be your primary focus.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm sure, Jill.
It always is.
That's so gallant of you to help clean up. By the way, I think that really is. You deserve like the Walter Payton Man of the Year award or something for that. All right, Ed, thank you. Thank you. Good work today. And the Cowboys, in an improbable fashion, pull out a 34-26 win in Washington and improve to 4-7. The Commanders fall to 7-5. And as we tape this, Eagles getting ready to play this very evening, and they have a chance to really start running away with this division if they can get a victory over the
Rams.
That's right. Okay, Chargers play on Monday night. I was getting two of my Los Angeles teams mixed up in my head.
Chargers, Ravens, Harbaugh brothers.
That'll be something, yes. And I haven't seen anything on that yet. There's been no build-up from your former network. Okay, it is for Mike Hamilton and the Rogue Media Network and my close friend, Ed Werder. It is, I'm Matt Mosley. Everybody have a great one. We will see you on the next Doomsday.
We are Rogue Media Sports. Elevate your experience with Grenco Science, the leaders in cutting-edge vaporizers. Whether you're at home or on the go, our sleek, powerful devices deliver smooth, consistent hits every time. Quality you can trust, innovation you can feel. Grenco Science, take your vapor game to the next level. Visit us at grencoscience.com.